Okay, welcome in day 2 of our coaches panel for the 8 coaches represented here today. Matt Berry from ESPN. Kind of a fun conversation we have with all the coaches because it's the one time they can all get together. We can discuss college football, the health of the conference, the health of the game. 2 coaches up here now been at their respective schools for 21 years. Whit, you've been at Utah for 21 years. Mike Gundy's been at Oklahoma State for 21, and you've been in the league the longest since the realignment. And I just want to know from you how this league has evolved over the years since you've been in it.
Well, there's a lot of change with the new schools that are coming in, and I said this earlier, I think it's drawn a lot of interest across the country, and there's still some newness to it, which is good for viewership. We have very recognizable head coaches, and the good thing about this league is, or the bad thing for coaches is, there's so much parity.
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't know if anybody can sit here and think this is going to be a win or this is going to be a loss, and I think that's great. I feel like that we have the best commissioner in all of sports, and he gives us a chance to continue to grow and develop this league every year.
Yeah, and Rich Rod, coming back in now, West Virginia, you've been outside looking in. How would you assess what you've seen on the outside of the Big 12 the past few years?
Well, first off, what's changed is that we get paid pretty good, too, now. You know, a couple guys standing right there got our start in small colleges, and so I don't think any of us got into the profession for the money, but there's a responsibility when you're getting that much money getting spent on coaches and on players now and on programs. You have a responsibility to have a good product out there for your fans and for college football. And again, I've been in the league just for a couple months now, and there's no question. If you look at the quarterbacks coming back in the Big 12,
yep.
Look at the staffs that are in the Big 12 and the players and talents in the Big 12. We have one of the best leagues in the country, and it's probably going to be the most exciting league to watch every weekend.
Yeah, and Coach Prime, you touched on it a minute ago, Brett Yormark and what he's done for this conference. What does this league, in your mind, need to do to sustain itself among the elite in terms of talking about elite leagues in college football?
We just got to keep kicking each other's butt, and that's the problem. Everybody's so darn good up here, you can't just think you're going to go into any of these cities or have them come to you and have a win. You just got to keep evolving, and that's tough, especially with NIL, and that's tough with just the retention of some players that you're trying to keep. It's tremendous. I think everybody now has learned tremendously about the portal. You've learned about the finances, and you're not just coaches anymore. Now you got to understand this is a business, and you got to conduct this like it's a business.
It's a good jumping off point for the next question. Whit, I want to ask you about that because you've been around a long time. You've been around the sport. You've seen it change year in and year out. Brian was talking about it a minute ago, the windows, the NIL, the transfer portal. In your mind, what needs to happen to make this whole sport cohesive again?
Great question. I think everyone's searching for that answer. It's just, it's all boiling down to try to create a level playing field, if that's possible. There's never really been a level playing field in college football, but I just think that, as far as our conference, first of all, to piggyback off Coach Prime, we got to win the out-of-conference games as far as strengthening the conference. That was, what you asked Coach, and I think that will help. But the rev share thing is going to be somewhat of a, I don't want to say equalizer, but that'll be something that at least puts some guardrails on things and gets things more in line for each school, and not have it just be completely the wild, wild west.
Yeah, and Coach Brandon and Coach Fritz, we were just talking about this on ESPN on the set a moment ago, about the challenges of coming in as a first-year coach, the portal windows, rosters getting rated. Is there a way to stabilize that so in your first couple of years, you're not running around trying to figure out who you have, what you have, who's talking to your players, and who's on your roster?
I would say for us, the biggest thing about creating some stability is some consistency of your coaching staff. I think the leadership of any organization, the more consistent, the more continuity you can have there, gives you a chance to have a little bit more stability in the program. And then the roster overhaul, I think that's also in that first couple years, you're also figuring out there's always some sense of like the previous coach's guys and then your guys, right? And trying to get all those people either on the same page or getting those guys to either stay or go. And so I think that part of it is, how with the staff continuity and then building a roster that is all moving forward together is a critical piece of it. And that's what we've been fighting to do this offseason.
Coach Fritz?
No, I agree with all that Coach was talking about for sure. And the other thing I'd just add, I heard Coach Prime talking about it, is the tampering also. And you're in a program and other people contacting your current roster. We got to figure that out. And get that to not happen anymore in our great sport.
And Coach Leipold, how would that go about happening?
Well, we got to continue to find the guardrails of enforcement as well, because everybody knows there's a lot of creative people out there that are trying to find their way around the system, getting the players, getting the agents, third-party high school coaches, whatever it is, put the feeler out, and then next thing you know, they're talking a dollar figure with a young man. That's not the way to do business. I think we as coaches and leaders have to set the example of doing this with integrity once we get everything set.
And Sonny, how much do the coaches in the conference talk amongst each other about things in the league or the issues we're discussing up here of the tampering and the portal and everything that goes with it?
Probably not as much as we should, honestly.
Yeah.
There's obviously conversations that take place, and guys have known each other for a long time. But I do think that's one thing that we probably could do a better job of, is just making sure that we're willing to communicate with each other. You should be able to call anybody up here and say, hey, man, I got a question about this. This happened. I'm not comfortable with this. What can we do to make sure it doesn't happen again? Because, look, at the end of the day, this game is about the kids. It's about the players that play the game. We want to make sure that those guys are taken care of, and we want them to have the best opportunity to do that. But at the same time, we're trying to build programs, and we're trying to keep our jobs. And it's a fight, man. There's a lot of good football coaches up here at great schools that have had tremendous amount of success. It's incredibly competitive. But at the same time, we got to make sure that we can lay our head down at night and feel good about what we're doing and how we're doing it. And it all begins with communication. And I do think we've got to improve that and continue to do a good job of developing that communication amongst each other.
And Prime, you were talking about it during your presser about NIL and what these players deserve and how the game is modified to that point. From where you sit, doing it at the highest level in the NFL, how do you believe NIL should be guardrailed now, especially with the revenue share?
I wish it was a cap. Like the top of the line player makes this, and if you're not that type of guy, you're not going to make that. That's what the NFL does. So the problem is you got a guy that's not that darn good, but he could go to another school and they give him $500,000, and you can't compete with that. That don't make sense. And you're talking about equality, not equality, like equal. I guess it was equality. And all you have to do is look at the playoffs and see what those teams spent. And you understand darn near why they're in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. It's kind of hard to compete with somebody who's giving $25-30 million to a darn freshman class.
Right.
It's crazy. We're not complaining because all these coaches up here can coach their butts off and give them the right opportunity with the right players and play here and there, you'll be there. But it's what's going on right now don't make sense. And we want to say stuff, but we're trying to be professional. But you're going to see the same teams darn near at the end and with somebody who sneaks up in there. But the team that pays the most is going to be there in the end.
So why not say something? Get together, unify. Coach Gundy, why not say something about it?
Well, I think what Coach said is right, and we're all wanting to prepare and instill quality information and confidence in our team. And I don't think that any coach wants to say, well, our players aren't good enough and we need to give them more money and we need to swap them out for other players. But I will say this, I've been in the league a long time, and this group, in my opinion, is as strong as it's been and has the best opportunity to come together and make decisions for what Coach Dyke said. This is all about the players. A lot of times they talk about us and that, and we don't want it to be about us. We want it to be about the players, and we really need to get some guardrails to eliminate the things that are going on from a tampering standpoint and players that are coming out of high school that are getting way too much money before they've ever made a play on game day. That's how I feel personally about it. I'm okay with paying the players that are producing.
Yeah.
And that's the NFL model that I believe that some of what we pattern ourselves out of needs to be that. Now, we're not going to be the NFL, but that's been a very successful business model for 50-plus years, and there's a lot of ways we can look at that. But, again, we're going to head back into collective bargaining, and nobody wants to go in that direction at this time.
Yeah, and it's come up. Maybe if the players are going to get paid, they sign contracts. And at that point, then they technically become a professional athlete. They're getting paid and they're signing the contract. Would something like that in your mind, Coach Rodriguez, help if you say, we're going to pay you this money, but you're going to be here for 3 years because you signed for the money and that's where you're going to be?
Yeah, it's just my personal opinion. I don't know how a guy can make $500,000 a year and have a contract and not be an employee. You know what I mean? So, the CBA thing has probably got to get that way. I think it's a little better than it was a month ago, but it's still a fix that has to happen. My biggest beef is that all these coaches up here are good coaches that understand the profession. They wouldn't have got to this position, right? So my hope and wish would be that the coaches and the athletic directors and the commissioners are at the forefront of making a decision what's best for college sports and college football than somebody that's not done this for a lifetime. And I'm speaking just in my personal opinion. Somebody ask one of our opinions, or ask our ADs, or ask our commissioners, what do you think is best for college sports? How do we fix it right now? Now, I know we got to get congressional help, and I'm going on my soapbox here, but there's not anything that we can't fix. But you got to talk to the right people and have the right people making the decision to fix it. Because if you don't think we don't have our players' best interests at heart, you don't understand the profession either and what we got into it for. So, none of us, like I said, I know we're talking, some of us kind of came up, the small school way and then earned success, and our players are getting the same message. We don't want entitlement, we want earned success. But I think the powers to be, whoever that is, maybe needs to give these coaches and these athletic directors and these commissioners a little bit more control over how the college athletics is going to go in the future.
And thank you for your soapbox. I think it was for everybody to listen to, because but that's what we want. We want your opinions. We want to know how you feel about the state of the game and where it's headed, because we all love college football more than any other sport. And so now we sit here at a crossroads. There's going to be playoff. There's going to be expansion. There's going to be everything, because the sport continues to grow. 5+11 is one of the topics of conversation throughout the week. Coach Whittingham, where do you stand on playoff expansion in the 5+11?
Well, I'm all for it. I think that's the right way to go, particularly for our conference. 16 teams is definitely the answer, in my opinion, as well. More access for more teams. But to me, and through conversation with Commissioner Yormark, I don't see anything that even approaches for the Big 12 that makes sense like the 5+11.
Coach Leipold?
I agree with that a lot, and I think the other dilemma that you're starting to hear about is what is the conference championship games going to really be worth in some of these other proposals that are out there. I think 16 teams is the way to do it, because being at smaller levels and you're looking at playoffs, when you're competing, you need to play out the season and win your games and win your conference championship to get a home game. And if home games are going to be at stake, then all games are meaningful all the way until the playoffs start. And I think when you get to a playoff format that has 16 teams and no byes, that puts more weight into those games.
Coach Brennan, would uniform schedule work with all the leagues? I think everyone should get out there, play the same amount of conference games, and perhaps schedule another Power 4 game or two within that schedule with a different league. Because then when we're looking at resumes, now you're really talking about a resume, because all records aren't created equal. So how might scheduling fix that?
No, I think that would be incredibly impactful. I actually got asked this question earlier. I think that's one of the things that's challenging when you're looking at it, where different conferences play a different amount of conference games. One of the challenges I would assume is just that, like, so many of these games are scheduled so far in advance. And so there's like all these, games that are contracted out over the next 6, 8, 10 years. And how do you readjust all those games? But I'm all for anything that gets college football on an even or more level playing field. Whether that's how we schedule, what the guardrails are, what the salary cap is, anything that gives us a chance for some consistency of the game and the parity that has made this game the best sport in America. How do we find a way to get back to that?
And Coach, I'm gonna make you the commissioner of college football right here, right now, and you get.
I like that.
All right, so
I like that.
Congratulations, you've been hired. You get to step in front of everyone in college football to tell us how you would fix it. What would your decision be?
Equality, man. I mean, equality. We have alumni, we have boosters that's doing the best they darn could, but sometimes they just can't compete with some of the other powers. And I wish it was truly equality. They're trying to say, yeah, with a cap and all that, with a collective bargaining, or whatever they call it. It's equality, but it's not. Now they go back to doing stuff under the table. They go back to the agents. Now you got parents trying to be agents. You got the homeboys trying to be agents. You got the friends trying to be agents. You got a lot of bull junk going on. And quite frankly, we're sick of it. Nobody's saying it. I'll say it for everybody, okay? We're sick of it. We're sick of it. And you're not going to fix it unless you listen to these men with all this experience. You're not going to fix it unless you hear these guys with all this experience.
Willie, on the field this year, this conference is so exciting because of the quarterbacks. From your seat, how would you assess what the Big 12 is coming into this year?
Well, a couple people touched on it. I just think there's so much parity in our league. It's, I've been in, it's my 6th different league, and there's been some leagues where, maybe you had a couple games where, you brought your B or C game and you can still win it.
Yeah.
In this league, you got to be ready to play every single week, and we've got great coaches. I think, you study film, you watch what they do from week to week. It's a very, very well-coached league also, and you just got to be ready to play week in and week out.
Yeah, and Sonny, the health of the league. You heard Brett Yormark talk about it yesterday. Top to bottom, competitive balance, again, is kind of the buzz term. You've been around this area for a while. How would you assess the health?
Yeah, look, what other league in college football history? We did preseason polls last year. The team that finished last in the preseason poll won the league championship. Mm-hmm. Seriously, in the history of college football, how many times has that happened? Not very often. Yeah. And so it speaks to the quality of this league. This parity, as Willie said, you better play well every single week or you're going to lose. It's just the way it is. And that's what makes this so much fun to watch. And I think as a conference, we have to do a great job of selling that because, quite frankly, that does not happen in some of the other leagues. Those are very top-heavy leagues. The same teams represent those leagues year in, year out as champions. And this is unique, and this is different. This is exciting. This is a brand of football that really not too many people have seen in the past. So we got to do a great job as a league of selling that because it's true.
Coach Gundy, do you believe nationally this league is a bit overlooked?
Well, I don't know about overlooked, but the discussion with the playoffs and such and the teams, and I believe you should have to earn your way into that. But one thing that I mentioned a few years ago and have followed up with this is as you watch this league, there's a lot of similarities in the NFL. You're going to beat each other up.
Yeah.
This is what we're all talking about. And the coaches up here, and I'm sure the 8 that were up here yesterday,
yep.
I was with them in Orlando, and I think everybody believes that that's going to be the real challenge now because of like what Coach said, we're not in a league where there's 2 or 3 teams, and we're in a league where you better be ready to play every Saturday. And whether people want to hear it or not, you might play your butt off and have a great year, and you might only win 7 games.
Yeah.
In a league, it's extremely difficult, and you might have 2 or 3 games, 4 games, you lose, 2 or 3 points, or at the end of the game, and that's what can happen. But I think that's going to draw a lot of viewers to this league.
And any of you can answer this because, look, all records, like I said earlier, aren't created equal. You could have a couple of 10-2 teams and a 9-3 team that just went through a gauntlet of a schedule that may not be as good as an 11-1 team's record says, but at 9-3, you probably deserve a shot at the postseason.
Yeah, just speaking for myself, I know you always kind of take a look at your conference games, but I don't have one thought when I go to bed at night what Oklahoma State's doing or Kansas is doing. I'm worried about West Virginia, you know what I mean? And I think every coach up here will tell you the same thing. You got so much to do with your own programs that you're doing everything you can so your program does well, and every coach has that same mentality. I think that's why this league is probably in the best position it's been in. I'm new to it than it's ever before because you have that kind of singular focus on the stage.
Yeah, and look, again, we've had the 8 coaches here yesterday. We have you 8 here today. We could legitimately make an argument for the entire league to win and play in the conference championship. We appreciate your candor. We appreciate your time. Our Coaches Roundtable here at the Big 12 Media Days.